But before I go, I'm gonna show you you're nothing even at your own game. I'm gonna kick your ass.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
All right, everybody. How's it going? It's one fucking hour time. I am Evan Husney. And of course, this is the show where we talk about one movie for 1 fucking hour. Of course, don't forget that. And we got Tom Fitzgerald in the house. What's going on, Tom?
One fucking hi.
I don't know, but we got one fucking Marcus over here. What's going on, Marcus?
Aloha. What's up, everybody?
All right, that's the
Great
official
movie. We should do Aloha.
Oh my god, that would be insane. All right, guys. Well, you ready for this? Episode 40. It's episode 40 time.
Whoa, this is 40.
This is 40. Oh shit.
That's our 41st one.
Yes. Right. Exactly.
Oh my god.
All right. Episode 40, guys, is going to be on the film. On the film EMMA MAE from 1976. So here we go.
I'm looking forward. Wait, I'm looking for. I think we're going to get a lot of a new audience from this because YouTube, the algorithm's going to hear us say the word MMA, like MMA, so many times that it's going to think like, oh, this is an MMA video.
Like, Joe Rogan suggestion.
Exactly.
I hope not.
Yeah, we'll have like I don't know, ads for different body products that help you
protein powder,
protein shakes. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so that'd be great to insert right here. All right, it's episode 40. Fuck that shit. EMMA MAE, 1976. Here we go. EMMA MAE. I'm gonna say it like that. All right, and I'm gonna
separate it out.
Separate that shit out. All right, so I'm gonna start that clock, and here comes that clock. 1 fucking hour. Here we go. All right, everybody. Little background on the film before we get started here. EMMA MAE is the 1976 film from renegade filmmaker Jama Fanaka, one of the key figures of UCLA's LA Rebellion movement, something I'm sure we'll talk more about in the hour. The film is a portrait of a Spitfire teenager finding her bearings in Compton after leaving her home in rural Mississippi. While grappling with the culture shocks of the big city, EMMA MAE falls deeply into the throes of teenage heartache, resorting to a reckless bank heist to avenge her man, all while fearlessly standing up against the racist powers that be and ultimately finding sisterhood in her community. So that is the movie, guys. I've said before on the show, I think teeing up to this episode, I think the world of this movie. I saw it for the first time I think it was about a year or two ago for the first time. And it just felt like such a gem, super amazing discovery movie. It's like, it's got everything and it's super powerful, even though it's, it's this kind of crudish, low budget movie, but it packs such a punch and the performances are so amazing. It looks amazing. It's actually a little bit of a tough movie to see. You can catch it on YouTube. You can kind of pirate it on YouTube. But of course, I think the best way to see this movie is definitely this Blu-ray edition here. It's absolutely amazing. The quality is incredible. It's the right way to see it. Don't see it on YouTube. But anyway, let's start this thing off because, Tom, I know you have a little bit of a background with this movie. You're a big Jama Fanaka fan, and also you're into the LA Rebellion stuff. So tell us a little bit about your history with him and his work.
Well, so I was self-educating in my early 20s about film, and I would literally do things like go to the library. This is a long time ago. And so one thing I picked up on that I really thought was, I couldn't see any of this stuff, but I thought it would be an interesting lead to go down, was third world cinema, and specifically like cinema nouveau. Check that out for further reading. And then I started thinking almost literally, where I saw Sweetback around that time. And I started thinking, I don't know if anybody else made the connection, but because of sort of the African diaspora, I felt that like the ghetto life in America is its own kind of third world. And these were expressions within the third world. And I was thinking about how revolutionary cinematically and in message Sweetback was specifically,
Right.
The Melvin Van Peebles film. So I got really sprung. And that was my favorite film for like many years. It's still one of my favorites. But I was just trying to like hit that nerve. So my point is, I was looking around and I started hearing about, I saw an ad flyer in some zine of Welcome Home, Brother Charles. And the review was like, oh boy, you have no idea. Like, yeah, whatever. This movie's crazy. That movie's crazy. But the end of this movie, and I was like, I got to see this. So then it finally, again, this was a million years ago, and it like took me forever. And I realized that there was a VHS of Welcome Home, Brother Charles, and it was called, oh my God, I'm spacing the name, Soul Vengeance. And so I had to dig up Soul Vengeance from a local video store, but I watched it and I was really enthralled because it was clearly 16, and it was clearly my favorite thing in the world, which is like a thesis film that was blown up and shown in drive-ins. I'm like, Be Still My Heart, so Soul Vengeance. And so, and the ending is stunning.
Can you give the people just a quick little synopsis of what Welcome Home, Brother Charles, which is Jama Fanaka's first full feature film, what that's about? Like, what's the pitch of that movie?
I don't want to spoil, I actually really don't want to spoil the ending.
Okay, but don't spoil the ending.
Yeah, well, okay. It's like, anyway, so, he gets busted. He's like a low-level criminal in Watts. It's a very Watts world, this film. And this guy just gets mixed up, and he gets busted. And the sadistic cops, huge racists, and they mutilate his genitals. Maybe not to the point of, like castration, but pretty close. And it's really a nightmare scene to watch. And he's in the back of the police car. And so then there's some kind of mystical connection that he makes where he hears the drums of home, and he looks at a spinning statue of home, of Africa, and inside him, almost like a superhero, he conjures like this force that allows him to take revenge upon the cops' wives, and the whole white kind of pig, quote unquote, society. And he does it in this really incredible, abstract, mystical, fantastical way. But again, this film is gritty 16 millimeter, shot with like friends and students, in the mean streets of South LA. So just that combination, I was floored. But the whole film is interesting. But the ending, don't want to spoil it. It's quite an ending.
If I can, sorry, just real quick before you get into LA Rebellion, because I think it's really interesting. Just for the folks at home and everything, and Marcus, if you want to throw down on this too, but I think it's really interesting that people should know too that if you're not familiar with Jama Fanaka's movies, his first three features, Welcome Home, Brother Charles, this movie, EMMA MAE, and Penitentiary, are all ostensibly student films. He's at UCLA in the film program, in the master's program, but he's cranking these movies out. He's raising financing through grants, getting student grants, getting money from his parents, doing whatever he can to bootstrap these productions to get them out. Obviously,
AFI was a big supporter, like the way they kind of supported David Lynch.
Right.
Actually. Right in the 70s, it was AFI, but then he also got a nice fat NEA, when like the federal government was cool and not all like, cracker Republican, pushback on that stuff. So he basically scraped it together and had three features in a row that wound up, getting distributed, playing grindhouses and drive-ins.
Penitentiary, rated R.
It's so amazing. And how many student films come out every year? Maybe less back then, but then I think there's still a fair amount. And it's like for Jamal, he saw an opportunity to like actually make a real movie, instead of just some half realized student film. It doesn't feel, they feel rough at times, but I don't think EMMA MAE feels more rough than any other film.
MMA is the least of the three. MMA is pretty polished, So we'll get to that. So just, if you just want me to wrap it up just very quickly to give it the largest context is like, I was into third world cinema. I kind of had my own stupid self-thesis walking around, in the early 90s about like the ghetto America had its own, and that was Sweetback. I'm just doing recommended stuff. There's but what I'm saying is, my point in just elaborating for a second on all this is I realized that LA was really the heart of this. New York always, other than Superfly, New York, but even that one always had some studio backing, of course, with Shaft and like Charleston Blue or Welcome Home, Cotton Comes to Harlem, that kind of thing, and Hollywood certainly had its own Hollywood stuff. Like Trouble Man was produced by like, exploitation theaters, but the indie LA was what really captured my interest. There's this movie called Speeding Up Time. Nobody knows that. The Bus Is Coming is very obscure, but very cool. And then you've got, but what's happening in tandem, I didn't realize it then, but I'd learned about, what's called the LA Rebellion. The LA Rebellion was at UCLA, late 60s into the 70s. Fanaka was a member of this scene, and it was because of the very beginnings of affirmative action. Black film students got a chance to actually go to a prestigious film school. UCLA is a big deal. I mean, who's also UCLA? It's like Lucas, right?
Coppola.
Yeah.
Say again?
Well, that's USC, right?
George Lucas is USC.
Okay, I got that wrong. Yeah. Sorry.
I think Coppola went to UCLA.
Okay,
right? And
that's it.
Yeah.
So this was the scene, and there was my favorite guy, other than of course Fanaka, was this guy Hali Jarima, I think, who was an Ethiopian refugee who he made wild short films. I'm going somewhere with this. He made wild short films that were very strident and very uncompromising and had zero. There was more like, it was Godard. It was like 70s Godard, and they're awesome movies. There's also Charles Burnett, who made Bless Their Little Hearts and
Killer Sheep.
Yep. Awesome filmmaker. And but then what's funny is that Fanaka happens, and because it's the 70s, there is that strident kind of super anti-Hollywood. They were all anti-Hollywood and much more quote unquote Godard, R.I.P. But the thing is, also Fanaka too was like not trying to break. What I'm saying, at least none of them were trying to break into like mainstream films. They weren't trying to do like Chinatown kind of stuff. But Fanaka, because he did try to make films that would be seen by people, actually was considered, I wouldn't say a sellout, but he was derided somewhat by that school that he was in, that scene at UCLA. So it's kind of ironic because his stuff is, I wouldn't say incredibly commercial, especially like Brother Charles, but at the time, the relativity of it was that he had like things like narratives,
right,
and exploitable elements.
Yeah, he really wanted to. He didn't want to make like strictly art films like a lot of his contemporaries were. He wanted to kind of subvert what was going on, in other genres and explore other genres and add those elements into his movie and kind of have a nice balancing act between something that had a lot of raw humanism in it, that had a lot of, humor in it too. I mean, his movies all have that
and
as well.
Surrealism.
And
he
surrealism.
Did it all.
He did it all.
Like he had hardcore art. He had hardcore art house moves.
Yeah,
you're right. He had like great humanistic naturalism, especially with this film, EMMA MAE.
Yep.
And also there's some quote unquote exploitable elements too in his film. So I feel like he did it all, and it's very fully realized. You know what I mean? I don't think you could peg him as being just like a guy who was trying to crank out some drive-in movies in the mid 70s.
No, not at all. And just to put a cap on this before we move on too, is just talking really quickly with Penitentiary too. It's the idea that, what you were saying, Marcus, is that very unprecedented, for anyone to make 3 films that be commercially released while you're still a student. And with the third of which being Penitentiary, made for $600,000, I think, but it went on to gross $32 million worldwide. So huge success, huge success. But prior to that, he's doing EMMA MAE. I'm gonna try not to. Okay, there we go. And this movie, obviously, to me, just has so much going on for it, and it's so rewarding. It's such a gem. And I thought maybe we could start by just sort of talking about how we're introduced to the character, because I think it's pretty interesting in this movie. Because as I said in the synopsis, it's basically this fish out of water story where the character of EMMA MAE, played by Jerry Hayes, who's incredible in this movie. It's like it's a tour de force performance.
Yeah. The only film, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think she was Marcus. She was a theater student, right?
Yeah. I guess she was a theater student, and all the theater students acted in all the all the film students' films, and she really was from Alabama. And so she had that kind of Southern thing. And I think that, what she said was that Jamal based it off of his own cousin who came to LA and had like sort of similar kind of a culture shock experience being from the South, and then being a country girl and coming to the big city.
Here.
And
his real cousin, her name was Daisy Lee.
Oh, wow.
So that's even more Southern sounding than MMA.
Yeah.
Right.
It is. Yeah, that's that Southern convention. The two names stuck together. Yeah.
Daisy Lee.
Daisy Lee. So yeah,
and then her mom. Should I go ahead? Or?
Go ahead.
Yeah, her mom. I guess her mom died. She had a similar story to the character too. Like her mom died when she was young. There's like a painting on the wall of her mom is actually her own mother.
Shit.
Wow, love that.
Wow.
And then I guess if we're just going to talk about Jerry for a second, she talked about how she contributed a lot to the film, as a giving her, basically directing herself, or like having control over how her character was presented.
Her dialogue, more than the dialogue,
Yeah, I guess yes, she said that. There's like an interview of her online, and she talks about this stuff where she says that Jamal, his filmmaking style, that he would let everyone come in and contribute a lot to the movie to make to bring their own point of view and their own creativity to the role. So she felt like she directed herself in the film, and she even wrote some she even wrote some of the dialogue, she wrote the monologue in the film, where she is the monologue where she's talking about if my mama said to me, if you're gonna do something, you need to tell everybody, explain why, and if not, you just need to go out there and do it, or else you'll never be fulfilled. She wrote that passage and stuff.
Wow,
so
that's cool.
She's pretty interesting.
That's awesome.
But she has a real naturalism that she brings to that role, and I guess that's kind of what she brings, this naturalism and authenticity,
Oh yeah.
And she's got the right look for that character, but it is interesting. She looks great on film. She's not a classical beauty or anything, she's not super tall or just in contrast to someone like Pam Grier or something, I think it's there's just a lot of cues when you start watching the film that this is going to be different than
oh yeah, and he's big into that.
How a normal exploitation film might go.
He's very aware of, especially by 76, of taking the blaxploitation genre, subverting kind of what that is, or what the expectations of that would be, and we'll get more into that.
And that was really the late. Really, if you think of the trajectory, this is coming. Even Brother Charles, it's things are really washing out pretty fast, winding down into pure genre crap, or mutating a little bit, into stir crazy eventually, that kind of thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he was there. He was really the king of latter era blaxploitation, I would say, and he made it his own.
Totally, 100%. Going back just real quick to that scene where we're introduced to her for the first time, it kind of sets the stage for the movie because, so she's a transplant, from the South. She's coming into the big city. She's meeting her family. Her mom has died. That's the character, as we said, also mirrors real life. And she appears to be meek. She kind of gives this kind of quality off when when she walks off the bus and everybody first meets her for the first time. People are making fun of her, and they look at her, the way she's dressed, the way she looks. And then there's this amazing scene right off the bat where this movie starts to shift into high gear, because when we get into this party scene where she meets this character Zeke, who's talking trash about her immediately, then all of a sudden she stands up and fucking decks the shit out of him.
She throws some haymakers.
And instantly becomes
Alabama
a legend.
Slammers.
And it's incredible. It's just amazing to watch that, because the movie just
it's awesome.
Comes to life in that moment where you're like, oh wow, this is not all what I expected, out of this character, and I think that is kind of a interesting choice, it takes a hard U-turn into what your perception of this character is, and then who she kind of proves herself to be in that moment. And then
can we talk about the party itself too? Maybe
that party or the second party? Which party?
The first party.
Okay,
what you're saying.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, it's just what hit me was, I've watched a million, maybe we all have, movies that are kind of more taking mid-70s films, California life of teenagers, high school, and they're like Malibu High or Super Van. It's a favorite of mine. We've seen a lot of these films, or Van Nuys Boulevard. And it's just funny because it's happening at the same time, MMA is. And it's like the Black experience of like, hey, we're all in high school. We're going to a party on Friday and we're doing this, doing that. And there's this person and I want to hook up with this person. I hate that person. And like, fist fights and making out and stuff. And I was thinking there's just that great naturalism. And what I mean is it's as down to earth and realistic as a lot of the better 70s teen films can be.
Totally.
But of course, they're depicting a white experience,
Right.
And it's just such a rare thing because it's playing out like it's what I'm saying is I'm trying to articulate. It's not life in high school necessarily more than just like your average teenager. Mm-hmm. Instead of like this thing where it's like like what is it, Dangerous Minds and like like there's
dangerous
like
minds.
There are gangs and there is conflict and there's like some drug dealing and stuff in the MMA world of that party, but it's frontlined by like it is just kids having fun. You know what I mean? And like being crazy and screwing up and wanting things and not liking things. And it's not as loaded as like this big message scene of like, that's really contrived and archetypal of like, a struggle. And like, it's just, it plays out like these are people first and it's very humanizing. Mm-hmm. And again, it's a testament to Fanaka that he's not jumping through the hoops of all kinds of tropes, from like social progress tropes to exploitation tropes, and he just like lands in the middle of just like, hey, these are people, and I know them, and they live like this, and they're up the street, and you could transplant a scene like that, and it could be in a Hispanic community's party or like a South Asian immigrant, it's like, or even a white one. It could be interchangeable somewhat. So I found that very unique and refreshing. You know what I mean?
Totally. I love his point of view, and there's a great snapshot of the era in there too, like of just like superficially, you see like the clothes obviously are incredible.
Totally,
love that clothes. Opening party scene. There's like the pop and lockers dancing. Like there's like awesome. So you see this like brief moment of like that captured on film as a little phenomenon. So yeah, I do love that he doesn't. You get a snapshot of like the Black experience, 76,
yes.
And then you also get, but like Tom says, he doesn't rely on cliches. There are those things sprinkled out, like you said, but like it really keeps the movie fresh all the way through. Like you don't really know where it's all heading, and I think like a lot of the films from this era, by 15 minutes through, the tropes have already signified where this is all going,
Totally, exactly.
And this movie, it's like, I don't know, like when I'm watching it, even this time watching it again fresh, I wasn't even sure like where it was all headed.
Right. Well, if
I can say, like a long time.
No, that's well said. That's a testament to him. I agree with you. It's like what kind of shape is this movie? Because usually everyone, sadly, can go, oh, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's boring, but he keeps you guessing.
But before we get too far from what you were saying, Tom, I also wanted to throw this in. When Ramey and I rewatched it, recently, and we said it even the first time we saw it, is that there's something about this movie, and it shouldn't feel this rare. It's sad that it's this rare to see a film this authentic, as you were saying, to the Black experience of just people hanging out, and and partying and hanging out and stuff. Right. But it does feel like a proto Dazed and Confused or something. Like it feels.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like
exactly.
It feels like obviously with the party scenes, the driving scenes, it sort of has that 70s coming of age style that would become more prevalent later on. But it's kind of even forecasting that, which I think is really cool. And so basically, so out of that, just to put a bow on this great scene in the movie is. Obviously, Emma Mae takes matters into her own hands. She beats the hell out of Zeke, and then she winds up becoming an item with Zeke's friend Jesse, and that leads us to this kind of budding romance that's obviously going to be ill-fated, but it leads us to this other party scene. I know, a total understatement of the century there, but there's this other party scene that's amazing. And one thing I just wanted to, if we're going from party scene to party scene, I love how we're able to just live in these moments and get these really naturalistic vibes with these scenes. But there's one shot I just want to call out. I don't know if you guys would remember it, but there's one shot that I love. I'm going to cut to it here when I do the edit. But there's this amazing moment in the film. I think it's the first handheld shot in the movie. And it's just like everything's been pretty much on sticks the whole time. And then it kicks into this beautiful handheld shot when Jesse and Emma Mae are dancing. And it picks up, and it's just this beautiful handheld, and it just, man, it feels way ahead of its time. I just got to show that. Yeah, well, you'll see it in the episode.
Okay, that's cool. Cut to it. If I can, I want to put a little button on this general topic we're talking about now about tribute to his approach to depicting lives lived. Is I have a comparison in my mind. It's actually the Chicano community, as it would have been called in 1979, in that awful movie Walk Proud. That's the movie. It's very infamous. Okay, Robbie Benson, of course, the cute little Jewish kid, gets brown contact lenses and portrays a Chicano gang member, which is unbelievable on paper, but on film, it's awful. So it's an awful film, and it has all those tropes that I'm talking about. That Hollywoodism where it's like no one's real, everyone's talking in abstract, long, like the way no one talks or reacts with each other. It's all like it's like a bad West Side Story. He starts dating a white girl from the rich high school, and it's just like, so further reading Walk Proud around that time, same Southern California subculture world, and it's just so phony. And again, it just makes EMMA MAE distinguish itself by the refreshing qualities that we were talking about. So that, I think, is a perfect example of what I was getting at.
Totally.
And,
Totally.
It's tiny thing. Marcus was saying, like the snapshot of a time and place. Mm-hmm. I love that. Whatever the weird pills they take, they're called fender benders.
Fender benders. Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't have known that if this movie didn't. And I love that.
Not
term.
the red devils. Isn't that what they were taking?
I don't know, but they're just calling them fender benders.
Yeah, I don't know.
I saw them later. At least the ones they're taking later on are like red devils, and I looked it up, and it was like Seconal, which I guess.
Oh.
A barbiturate kind of thing, but I guess I was looking it up. I was like, because it's one of those things like where, like that Quaaludes never existed, like in my lifetime. Like I don't know, people were taking Seconal in my lifetime, I guess, but I guess it's like been replaced by like Valium.
Everything else, scripts.
Oh, right.
Well, everything's
that kind of thing.
But no, anyway, just fender benders. Just that it's like you're saying that, and I'm 100% certain that wasn't in the script or anything. Like it wasn't like made up by the film. It was just like, again, perfect way to say it. It was a snapshot. It was just a freeze frame of 1976 South LA. It's awesome.
It feels great to do a movie that's like in LA again. I can't remember the last few we've done, but it feels like we're in New York a lot. And every time we're in LA, I'm just like, oh, right, here we go.
We went really crazy with like Remember My Name, for instance. And actually, here's Tom's habitual thing. I was, born and raised in Long Beach till I was 10, and I'm telling you, Long Beach is very poor and working class, like San Pedro, but I really lived like down the road from the world of EMMA MAE. It's very incredibly 100% like the way streets looked and like, like belly dancing at the bus stop kind of vibes.
All this. Oh, I got something on that later, but
in some ways the landscape hasn't changed in some ways, but the cars are different, but then like you look at the building, it just looks like LA still, even though all the cars and the clothes are different, but you still see the buildings and the lots.
Hardly any residential street like that has gotten any kind of overhaul at all. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And well, just like one thing I love about this movie, and it kind of goes to everything we've been talking about, obviously, is the authenticity. When you have a movie like this that's so low budget, low to the ground, made in a very renegade style, where you're probably shooting it over a very long period of time. You got to get a big team of people together to really, have faith in the project to get it across the finish line. It's like you can't get a movie this authentic, if you're going through the studio sort of system and the whole, that sort of thing. So there is something about like with this experience that, you know, or with this movie in terms of getting, you know, just pure authenticity coming through the screen at, you know, every freaking scene.
Did we want to talk about just to keep going on how it was one of his college thesis films, in that in especially the first two films with MMA specifically, the crew behind the camera, that's just fellow students,
right?
You know what I mean? And I'm sure like no one got paid. I'm sure it was not union or anything. And you know, the same thing with Sweetback. I mean, Sweetback was a renegade film. There's no union anything. It was, I think, pretty much a volunteer-based scene of people who wanted to learn how to do script supervision, and, you know, like we're on the clapboard, and it was like, let's all get together. And actually, I hope I don't get this wrong, but Jama Fanaka was born with, you know, his, you know, government name, as they call it. I forgot what it is. And but he called himself Jama Fanaka when he was in film school. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit. It's Swahili, and it's something like, "Together we shall all rise. Together we shall all flourish." You know, and that's what his name means. So I think that it's one of those beautiful things where this film, his early films, were all born of a community of people.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad you said that.
Who believed in him. Yeah, who worked and believed in him.
I'm really glad you said it. His birth name was Walter Gordon. Walter Gordon. But I'm glad you said the word community too, because I think that's a huge part of it. You know, I think a lot of his movies, or this movie in particular too, you know, is about the community, right? This whole movie is about the community of Compton. Yeah. And one thing, again, another scene I love in this movie that you just wouldn't see in any other more commercially driven work, you know, is this amazing sequence of just people hanging out and doing each other's hair, you know, or the character of Daisy, who's the hairdresser. And that scene is so amazing, and I absolutely love that. Like, and that because I know that what was important to him in terms of why he didn't like the tropes of typical blaxploitation films is because they didn't leave room to explore the themes of family and community and those types of things, right? It was all about the things that were, you know, plaguing the community and all the negative aspects and the traps and the things like that, you know? And so even though those themes are prevalent in his works still, but he wanted to leave room for the community, you know, and things like that. And so I think the character of Daisy, who's doing who's the hairdresser, is just an amazing. I just love that scene. I just love hanging out with them for whatever it is, 5 minutes. Or
Totally. And well, you know, the film has different tones and different feels, and it's very richly populated. You know, like we're saying. And I think that one of the scenes that struck me was like the morning after the big party scenes, and you come into like a low-income pantry. And people are just talking the way like, oh, I don't know, they talk. The people in like the quote unquote working class, you know, they talk about like, well, my boss sucks, or like this or that and everything. And they're just like real people, and they have bonds and friendships and family, and they care about each other, and they have bad times and good times. And it just, he lets it ride, like it lets the camera roll, and lets a room full of, specifically in this scene in the kitchen, of somewhat like middle-aged black women. Yeah. Just talking about, you know, a moment in time, like their Saturday morning, you know what I mean? Right. And I remember taking a step back, I was like, wow, this is stunning. Like, this didn't happen then, hardly. I think the closest thing, to be fair, would be a film like Claudine, if you're familiar with that.
I have not seen it.
1974, yeah. And it's a big Hollywood film, and it is doing sort of like a more Hollywood version of like raising a bunch of kids in the ghetto kind of thing. And it rings a little bit corny, but that's the magic of Jama. Like corny's not him. And like I guess I'm repeating myself, but there's two traps he could have taken. And in this scene is an example of how he didn't follow either, where it's like aggressive, agenda-ridden, and it's hopeless plight, and it's humorless. And I'm going somewhere with this. Or just like caricature, ridiculous, unreal. And, you know, we all love Pam Grier, but it's like, that's a comic book.
Exactly.
That shit's a comic book.
Right.
And this is just not. Now, one thing I was to say is humor. I noticed something. Brother Charles doesn't have that much humor. It has a few moments. But actually, Penitentiary, I remember when I saw it with my friend for the first time, I think we were on LSD, by the way. Okay, it's on cable. We were coming down, and I was like, "Oh, what the fuck is this?" And we found it was so fun and funny. Penitentiary.
It is.
Like there's a lot of really wild characters, and
Definitely.
the thing is, there's some really great oddball, funny characters in MMA as well.
100%.
Like you know, what I'm talking about, like those guys who are like gross and eating fish.
Well, I was
going to
talk about that.
Car. Like,
Yeah.
You know what? Every time I hitchhike, I always make sure to be eating like crab.
Well, that's
like who? What's up with those guys?
That's well,
I love that.
That's that's Zeke and Jesse, who are
Right.
munching on the crabs in the back seat, and then it's like, man, you eating the shit out of the crab or whatever, and it's like,
that's it.
yeah, and it's like, that's a funny scene. I love that scene, and and this movie has tons of incredible, quotable lines from it as well too. I mean, oh my God, there's so many things I want to get into to respond to that. But I think just to close the loop on what we were talking about, just so we can get out of the naturalism versus sort of the tropes thing, is, he said his films were anti-blaxploitation. That's what he called them. And, if you look at them, they don't have the surface level exploitation of women. There isn't really nudity at all in them, and a lot of the blaxploitation films do. Also, it's interesting in terms of how he treats white characters in the movie as well too, is that he doesn't use stereotypes of them either. It's not like like an individual white person is the problem in his films. It's more about the overall system, and like here's how the system is oppressive
as represented by like the car wash owner,
exactly.
who's somewhat complex. Like he is, for instance, sympathetic,
right?
And but it's almost like and I actually lean this direction about looking at how life is a guy like that is still just more or less working class. He's not like a millionaire like the car wash owner, and he's getting fucking squeezed by somebody else above him. You know what I mean? And he knows that he's a higher up than MMA and her friends, so he's squeezing down, and just everyone's trapped in this shitty system, And that's a good point. Yeah.
Can we set that scene up just real quick, if Marcus, unless you wanted to throw something on that? I was just gonna reiterate that scene, what that is.
Go for it.
Okay, yeah, just if you're following along, because it's a pretty pivotal moment in the movie. Basically, the relationship between EMMA MAE and Jesse kind of comes to a halt when Jesse is arrested after beating up. He beats up a few cops. Him and his buddy get sent away to prison. She immediately tries to raise money to get them out of prison, and then the way that they go about doing it, she rallies everybody together to do this. By the way. And let's get this car wash going and make it profitable. And it's amazing. And they're doing everything, and they're really turning this place around. And then, of
guess
course,
what? It's a community that's volunteering towards a goal.
Exactly.
Not unlike his crew.
Exactly. And that's what's going on, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful whole section of the film. And then, of course, this asshole shows up, and of course, the LA police are threatened by this community of black people making money and doing, and they're completely threatened by that, so they shut it down.
Outside of the system.
And then EMMA MAE's character delivers a great monologue following this when she's told that they have to shut down the entire place, and she says, "I don't understand. They've always talked about how us young people use dope and try to kill each other in the street. Then when we try to do something the way it's supposed to be done, they mess with us and try and shut it down." And that's one of the big sort of message moments of the movie there. And that leads her, of course, down that path of crime where they're going to eventually work outside of the system and pull off a giant bank heist, which is
out of frustration and bitterness.
Right.
Like there's there's a causation.
Yes.
That's happening. And so like, I wouldn't say we're justified, but it is understandable that they would just be like, all right, well, forget it. Like, because it's all a game.
Yeah.
And if you're not allowed to play in this stupid game, well, then you're like, well, then I won't play the game. So like, fuck you. And I'll play on the outside of your game and dip in and cheat because I think you guys are all cheating. So, it's a 70s cynicism that's broad, in society. But I think that it's justified, you know what I mean? And because America had a big revelation. This is like post-Watergate stuff,
Totally. Marcus, you had something on that?
I just think in general, there's so much that's been mentioned, but I really like the way that MMA is used as like sort of the like the messenger in the film, and like I read that he calls his films moving pictures because I don't know when he started doing that, but he wanted to move people with with the work and move them in the right direction, and it feels like that. I like that she's an outsider who comes into the community, and like she's telling people, she's noticing like the things that aren't working or the things that are holding people back, and she's I don't know, she communicates that to people. She's used, I don't know, it's not, she's holding up the mirror to the community to be like, this is a problem, but like we can like, find a way, find a better
fresh take because of her outsider perspective, and everyone else is just kind of like, isn't this the way it is? And they take it for granted,
right? That
it's kind of a raw deal, right?
Yeah,
and it's sorry, good.
Anyway, it's yeah, exactly.
Well, I think too, when she is trying to get everybody together to do it's another great comedic moment in the movie when she tries to get everybody to rally together to, work at the car wash. And she's like, all right, we're going to wash some cars. We're going to do this. We're going to get this going. And then there's somebody who's like, I ain't washing any cars. No fucking way you're going to get me washing cars. And then it's just this amazing comedic timing moment of EMMA MAE coming down standing on whatever she's on and comes down right up to this woman and just punches her in the face. And it's amazing.
Hey, y'all, be cool. Get off the girl. Wait a minute. Hold on.
Amazing little comedic moment there. And then, of course,
you know it's coming. You're like 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
It happens a couple times.
It does.
Just like 3 times. Yeah. Just
like clowns fools when she's like at it. Because I guess that's how she was bred. It's just like, we're not talking this out. We're going to punch it out.
Right.
And I say something.
It's the example that she can handle herself in this world.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that too. And one thing we should just say about the bank heist, if we can because we brought that up, let's just talk about that really quickly too, because it correlates too also with what we were talking about. Again, he's making these movies that are incredibly authentic and naturalistic. And I did mention anti-blaxploitation, but he also does, Jama also uses these sort of, genre tropes. He implements them like a heist, for example, in this movie to give it more commercial appeal because he wants people to see these movies and he wants them to have more viewership or marketing or whatever, which I think is kind of brilliant, to inject that into a movie like this. So what you kind of perk up when you understand that this movie is taking the direction of a bank heist movie, which kind of throws it in a totally different gear, which I love, and that's sort of precipitated by this one character. We got to spend a second or two talking about Big Daddy, who's an amazing character in this movie. I can't remember the actor's name right now off the top of my head, but he gives this amazing monologue in the film that is kind of the one unifying motivational wrestling promo to get everybody just to pull this off, and it's amazing. And that's when he talks about my favorite line in the film, which is where Big Daddy says, I mumble to forget.
Y'all always jiving with me about my mumbling. See, what you don't know is I mumble to forget. That's right. When I mumble, I forget that I'm ashamed to be as old as I am and still walking around.
Which is one of my favorite lines.
Yeah, what's up with that?
I mumble. I mumble.
I wonder
to forget.
I wonder if that actor was given a long leash and allowed by Fanaka the same way that she was. I wonder if he was like doing some of his own writing for his monologue. I don't know, because I didn't know that he let the actors kind of find their character. I wouldn't be surprised.
One thing I do know about how he approached directing actors, which is fucking brilliant, and if anybody out there is making a movie, if you can do this, I highly recommend it, because it's obvious, but it's a tool people don't have the luxury to use anymore. Which is, it does, he would talk about how he would get his cast together super early, well before he had any money to do it, and he was able to get his actors to rehearse over and over and over again, even when they didn't have money to shoot anything. So he kept going over the script and kept improving it, and then having the actors and the characters getting to a point where they knew their characters more than anything. So by the time they filmed it, they were those people. And he said it was a great technique because because film is expensive. He said, "quote Film is expensive, but rehearsals don't cost nothing." And so gotta love that.
It's so great. Yeah, that does feel like a component that's missing from like indie movies, or it just doesn't feel like anybody. It's like they're gonna spend the 30 days shooting it and not do any rehearsals before. It's like too expensive, and
sometimes
it does
you don't
feel
know.
People skip that step a lot.
Sometimes you don't know who's going to be in your movie until 6 days before you shoot it. That happens more time than you even know.
Right.
That happens a lot right now. That's what's happening.
And they just get parachuted down like
who am I?
Before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This guy, who am I? Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
So just I just have a couple observations in the last 15 or so minutes, like maybe just to churn the soil a little bit, but like here's another childhood memory of mine. I'm in Long Beach, and not far away was the SLA headquarters shootout and the house burning down. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Patty Hearst thing.
Yeah. So Patty Hearst was kidnapped, and then she became part of the kidnappers, the Symbionese Liberation Army, the SLA, and the police hunted the SLA members down not far from where this film was made and not far from where I fucking lived. And it was on local television, and it's one of my first memories of my whole life.
Wow.
Because it was just on one day, and everyone seemed so concerned. And the only thing on TV, because the TV for me should have been I Love Lucy or like the Flintstones, but it was a house burning down in what looked like my neighborhood for like 7 hours, because it was a huge local thing. So anyway, what I'm saying is I think there's definitely a shadow of the SLA incident that happened in that area. Just wanted to sort of throw that out there because, guess what the SLA did? They robbed banks.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to make that observation.
Topical.
It was just in the air. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And like, this is really stupid, and I apologize in advance, but if people are familiar with the film Norma Ray with Sally Field.
Right.
Sally Field?
Yep.
She's a union organizer for like really poor working class people in the South. And it's pretty good. And
it's definitely a Raimi film. It's definitely a Raimi film for sure.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I mean, I like definitely. It. Fucking Norma Ray. But what I'm saying is I kept getting echoes of Norma Ray, and it's particularly the car wash sequence. Because here's a woman and a Southern woman in both cases who's, galvanizing everybody together for a cause and to say no and to move forward. And I'm going to say something stupid where it's like, I think Norma Ray ripped off EMMA MAE, named everything. That's my conspiracy theory for the episode. And it's totally false and stupid. So
print the legend. Yeah.
My apologies to everyone in the world. And maybe I'll tap out with this one, let you guys rock out. But this is the greatest thing I've seen in a long time. But there's a B-roll shot of a little kid, at some point in the film going like, during a fight probably, where it's like, beat him up. And I don't know if you saw it, there's a kid with a fucking Welcome Home Brother Charles t-shirt, and also that's like that's my conspiracy theory evidence that of course he didn't make MMA first, because how would he have a shirt of the second?
That's actually
film?
the ending of the film. It's the end fight sequence is when between.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, I spotted that too, and I was like, God, that's an amazing T-shirt. Holy shit!
That's the coolest shit ever. Yeah. I love that.
Is it the main kid? It's not the main kid. The main little kid in it.
I don't think so. I think it's an onlooker.
Yeah. It's just an onlooker boy. B-roll. Yeah, like go get him, sister.
Right. That's awesome. That last shot, for me, that was like where she's like holding the little girl, and she gives another little speech at the end. I can't remember the content of it, but she gives another little speech at the end. She's crying, and she hugs that little girl, and they're like, "Come on, Emma, come home with us," or whatever, And then she's like looking down at her, and I felt like it was like another message point for Jamaa to be like passing on that knowledge, MMA's like knowledge to the next generation, passing that message on to like hopefully as like a dream for the future kind of thing. That's what I took away from that last moment.
Let's just contextualize the ending just a little bit too, because it's pretty powerful shit. So the movie, just from where we picked off, or from where we left off, so you have Jesse and Zeke in prison. Emma Mae gets the money from the car wash and from robbing the bank, gets all the money to get them out of prison, presumably. They come back, it's party time, but then, of course, in a heartbreaking moment, truly heartbreaking moment, Emma Mae discovers Jesse sleeping with another woman, right? And she's,
or any other woman.
Any other woman, right? Yeah. and is heartbroken, and that, leads to another amazing, amazing performance moment for the actress, where she, gives this monologue to him, where of course it ends with, this could be a viral clip on its own, but where she's like,
gonna kick your ass.
It's amazing, and slugs him, and then proceeds to beat his ass down the stairs, and then repeatedly punch him in the dick over and over again. And that's when your guy with the Welcome Home Charles T-shirts going,
right on Emma.
It's
completely humiliated. Like he's basically naked in the front yard, getting his ass beat,
getting punched in the dick
by
over
a woman,
and over again.
Which in macho. In macho world, that's like worse than getting beaten up by a guy.
Yeah, and then his friend even looks at him and is like, I don't respect you anymore anyway, and it's and that's a great moment. But to go to your point, Marcus, I think what was brilliant about that about the choice of the ending or what you're left with out of the movie is to go right exactly what you're saying. It's not that he ends it on a note of like, here's a portrait of a woman scorned. It's more an appraisal of her, finding her strength, both from herself and in the community. Because then what you're saying, then the community embraces her again at the end and is like, you're all good now. And so that I think is a great way to end this movie, to bring it up at the end, in a really empowering sort of way, and where everybody anyone who watches that is like, fuck yes. Like when you see him, beat his ass in the middle of the front lawn, the only sort of thing I can equate it to is like the ending of Witchfinder General, when the guy finally takes the axe, to Vincent Price, and you're like with every freaking axe strike, you're like right there, it's that same sort of powerful.
But it's interesting
moment.
I like you guys' observation where it's like she's not destroyed by the revenge and the vengeance that she takes.
Right.
She does it, follows through with it, and gets centered back onto herself and her priorities and going home, which is like the last kind of line of the movie. So that's a great grace note to end on, instead of like, well, I brought down to the depths of like crass vengeance and in this death spiral with this bad guy, and I'm going to be bad to him. Because you could end on that note, but it transcends that.
Right.
There's a part of me that wanted her to be right about him, throughout the whole movie, because she, as soon as they meet, she's like super into him, and he's kind to her early on, but we do see him behind the scenes kind of talking trash about her. But I wanted her to be right about him, and just be like, he's like in this fucked up situation, and like his life is fucked up. I wanted that to be the part of the story that's told, but by the end of it, he's just unrepentant, and he is a user and an abuser, and so I don't know. So I like that the wool is lifted from her eyes, and she sees that she,
Well,
but I did want her to, in some ways, I wanted her to be right about him and like be like, no,
I know what you mean.
He's good deep down,
It's kind of heartbreaking in the context of the film, where it's like, oh, this guy's just not cool. And actually, the pivot is where he's in prison, and I hate that scene. I mean, I don't hate
that scene.
I hate him in the scene. Where where they're like, where he turns. And that should have been the big.
Did you bring money? He's like, did you bring money? Because he's gambling all the money that she's giving him away in prison, which is horrible.
That's what he tells her, but he's probably doing drugs. Right?
Yeah, right.
Whatever. Yeah.
Who knows? Right? Who knows? But but I do think that why it works. There is a naivete there. Again, it's like her coming from a different whole world and coming into this and learning about it, and then now and coming to that realization, which is heartbreaking. But then she went
out with her first LA boyfriend, and was like, that guy sucks.
That prison moment,
Georgia guys or whatever.
That prison moment is the moment that we turn on him too, I think, as the audience completely, because we see that he's manipulating. Even after he's yelled at her, he's manipulated her, and she's behind the scenes. She gives the money to Big Daddy to give to her. Is it Big Papa? I can't remember. Anyway, but to give to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I manipulated her into giving me money." That's right.
Yeah, awful.
It feels horrible.
Yeah.
And I just, we're losing the time here. It's just like one observation I had is we're kind of looking at these big three films of his. They all feature prison as a motif. Not surprising, it's Black America, but obviously Penitentiary is set in prison, But there's also in Welcome Home, Brother Charles, that amazing. It's a still photograph montage. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah,
I think it's like black and white, color tinted, and it's such a powerful scene. It's beautiful. It's a work of art,
Yeah, it is.
And then there's even a little bit of prison in MMA, and there's a nice just little moment where our jerk guy, I forgot his name. What's his name? The bad guy?
Jesse.
Jesse.
Yeah, right, Jesse. Jesse is like grumbling to himself after having the visit with her, and some white dude sitting next to him looks over and then he's just like,
I got enough problem with these funky ass white people. I don't need you to come here and put all this bullshit on my motherfucking head. Just tell me I'm trying to
son, it's back to yourself.
Oh yeah,
like a nice little back and forth of like a shitty prison day in prison,
Yeah.
And
Totally.
and he had to leave that in there. That's like it shows that he has some nice wit.
Well,
that didn't have to happen. Just made that little 10-second thing happen.
One thing too, I want to make sure I got in. I know I've said it in a couple different ways, but I think it relates to the ending as well too, and a little bit about Brother Charles as well. But with the ending, it's like I think it is interesting to see with this whole movie when you step back that we've been saying it this whole fucking hour, is that Jama is subverting the tropes of a blaxploitation movie. And I think what's really interesting about that, even right through to the ending, is that he wants to give, because he wants to empower the community, and everything comes back to community, and he wants to give this movie MMA a different message than a lot of those other films do. Whether the other films are cautionary tales or they're examining the ugliest parts of those community, he was always totally about giving a more positive, uplifting message back to the community, and I think that's just really cool to see.
Truly. In different ways.
In different ways.
Film, but it's
yeah.
Now, I think that's a point that I think that gets something I know we all want to talk about, but maybe I have like a way in, is like that the way that those elements of blaxploitation are in there, and I think that allowed the films to be marketed as blaxploitation movies sometimes, right? Like, and maybe even mismarketed. I mean, you guys can speak to this too, but I know that specifically it worked, like the way that this movie was marketed impacted me. Like, I thought it was a blaxploitation movie for years. I just kind of put it in that. I loved that cinema without digging in too deeply to the history of them, when I was younger as a teenager and stuff. And,
sure.
And I actually even had a 35 of this movie that I bought like in 2006. I think I gave it to the Movie Geek. I can't remember quite what happened to it, but I don't have it anymore. But and I think I even Lars might have even introduced me to this film. I think I could just hear Lars saying Jama Fanaka. I could hear his voice saying Jama Fanaka. I could hear him saying it. So he might have even turned me on to it. But I didn't know the history of the LA Rebellion, or like didn't know anything about Jamal's like other works or whatever. I just thought it was sort of a blaxploitation movie. But I guess because it has those tropes in there, it's able to be marketed that way. And I'm not sure if that was his decision to sometimes like lean on that, or if these were like the distributor or whatever got a hold of these and changed the titles or whatever. I mean, you guys can.
Well, the title changes were thankfully only in the VHS days. And actually, in the last minutes here, I would like to dovetail into how the film, and it's after its life, after it was made. Excuse me. It's like the titles were always the titles theatrically. I'm sure there were cruder. There was crude ad art probably once in a while. Where it did play up. I mean, that happened all the time in all kinds of films. There'd be like these kind of gentle, sort of quiet, strange art films that would get, with a guy with a gun, and like it's different ad art from a different movie, and that kind of thing. So it's not an uncommon thing that would happen. But I'm sure just whoever distributed just said like, we've got an angle, let's go with it and let's pump it up. But that was especially the case with the VHS days. We talked earlier that Welcome Home, Brother Charles was called Soul Vengeance. It was stupid, but they decided that was better in like 1988 or whatever. And then of course MMA really got done dirt when it was called Black Sister's Revenge. And that's how I knew it. I rented that VHS.
That cover.
And look at that. I know it's so stupid. But I mean, this is a phenomenon, and we've enjoyed talking about this a lot. And I almost want to do a whole evening on this, you know.
Sure.
Where it's totally 100% misrepresentation of 70s movies in 80s VHS culture, where they would actually, like in that case, hire models, you know, like in 1989, you know, like in Culver City, to like do these quick ad, you know, like here's some props and a smoke machine, and they're doing things that, like, that person's not in the film. And the worst one is Ganja and Hess, was called Black Vampire, and it had like a cartoon art VHS cover art, you know, so it happened.
Those things really did a number on my head. Like, I would think a 70s movie was like a late 80s movie, so I wouldn't rent it, or the other way around. You know, it was very confusing. Like, it really did screw with me. But I'm still putting the pieces together. You know?
No, yeah. Oh, it's a mess, but it's sort of fun in a sick way to trudge through all that. But what I was going to say in the last minute here, throw it to you guys.
I got something too. So good.
Okay, well, just real quick, I wonder how this film was received, actually. Like, I wonder, because it isn't delivering. If you're like half watching this in a triple feature at a drive-in, you know, I wonder if people were like really bored, literally like falling asleep, walking out. Like, I wonder if it did have any kind of impact. I mean, it wasn't a big hit, so there's that. But I wonder if maybe it sort of touched some viewers in the Black community in America. I wonder, I don't know if there's any way to, you know.
Well, I think it's definitely, now we can say that I think it does have a little bit of a cult appeal now. I think people are probably rediscovering it more in the last 10 years than I would imagine at any point in time. You know, so I think that's cool. One thing I wanted to just really quickly get in before, if you guys don't mind, there was one interesting thing about Jama moment in his life that I thought I wanted to just get in that was pretty interesting, is that he himself had, I forgot to mention this, had also... he was a transplant from, he also came from Mississippi and then came to Compton. So he has that connection himself to the character of EMMA MAE. And when he got to Compton, there was a moment in his life that he used to talk about, where he was a teenager and he was hanging out one day with some guy in the wrong kind of crowd. And this guy was really talking him into busting into this store to hold it up and to rob it. And instead he went to the building next door, which was a UCLA building. And that's where he started his path to become who he became, and inquired in that moment how to enroll in college, which is
like the split the road.
Splitting the road
through this storefront.
Totally. Absolutely. So and what's really what and just to speak to how he did always give back to the community. I mean, he spent the last decade or so of his life, maybe more, fighting against the DGA, spending his own money with lawsuits to get them to hire more Black people in Hollywood. So that's how he spent his days, giving back to the community. So I think that's just something also interesting to highlight. Boom.
And we are out. Passed away about 10 years ago, unfortunately.
Yeah, 2012, I think. Yeah, 10 years ago, yeah.
Still with us. Well, that was it. That's a wrap. We did and
yeah.
I missed it already. Maybe we'll do Welcome on Brother Charles. Maybe we'll do Penitentiary in the future.
Oh, yeah. They're all great.
Really
It's really great. And I just implore you, if no one, if you're watching this, you haven't seen the film, sorry, we spoiled it, but definitely go out and watch it. It packs a punch. It's amazing. Penitentiary is great. Brother Charles is pretty wild. So he's a very, very interesting filmmaker to get into. He's definitely 1 fucking hour ready. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that was a blast. I think we should talk a little bit about next week and the road ahead for the show. What did we pick again? Oh, I just gotta think. Oh yes, I do. Yes. Okay. Right. Okay, so we're 40 episodes in to the show, and this will be our first non-English language film. So we're finally getting to, even though it does have some English in it, but we're gonna get, it's a little bit of a cheat, but we're dipping our toes into it. But
it's a foreign shot in America. We can't leave America.
We gotta ease into it.
We gotta ease into it. We gotta ease into it. But I mean, again,
if I wanted to read, I'd go to school.
Right. Exactly. Subtitles.
I just
yeah. Exactly. So, but I'm really excited about this. This is definitely a filmmaker. There's probably about, I don't know, a dozen or so, or maybe more, 20 so films of his you could probably do on this show. So this will be interesting. He's a monster filmmaker with a lot to talk about, but this movie I think is a apropos first choice for us for many reasons. And we are going to do 1 fucking hour next week on Werner Herzog's Strotzek. All right, we're doing it.
Starring Bruno S.
Yeah.
You know.
Some Bruno S shit.
He's other than Klaus Kinski, that was his 70s guy. Bruno
that was
S.
his Leonardo DiCaprio, right? If Klaus is De Niro, this is his Leo.
Yeah. I hear what you're absolutely.
No, not at all.
Yeah. No. I see it
Okay,
line.
good.
Yeah. So we're gonna do a real monster of a filmmaker, and it's like we could just hit a dartboard of his filmography and probably have a great time with anything. Yeah. But give this one a shot.
That's how we'll pick the next one, maybe.
Just the dartboard? That'd be great. I'd love that. That'd be a great idea.
Herzog dartboard.
Yeah, we should have a Herzog dartboard. That's a great idea.
Wheel of Herzog.
Yeah. Oh, I like a wheel too. That's a good idea. Maybe we'll implore that.
Werner.
Yeah, Werner wheel. All right, so and that actually, you know what? Having a Werner like wheel is very Strotzek. You know, like at the end of Strotzek would have a Werner wheel. So I could see that.
For the booths at the carnival. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh shit. That's true.
And I just want to tease one other thing before we're out of here. I want to tease the fact that we're going to be, this will be the last September episode, Strotzek, next week. And then everybody get ready for October, which is actually our 1-year anniversary month, guys. It's a big 1 fucking year. We made it 1 fucking year. So it's 1 fucking year. So
we just see the same movies over again, right?
Yeah, we're gonna run it back for Magnolia. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, but what we are going to be doing is we're going to be spending October, the 4 weeks of October, picking 4 horror films for October. So get ready for that. We're going to unveil what those 4 films will be hopefully next week, so you can get all revved up and prepared and pre-watched for all the films that we're going to do in October. So horror month for a 1 fucking year anniversary. That's gonna be starting week after next. After we do a little Strotzek, which I think will be great. Then diving into sheer fucking horror right after that. Yeah,
1 fucking year. Well said.
1 fucking year. Here we go. So, all right, everybody. Well, it was a great chat on MMA. Thanks for joining us on that. And we will see you again next week. But we can't leave you without your moment of Zen. All right, everybody, take it away. I'll see you later. Have a good rest of your week, everybody. So long.
Like I say, it's an honor, it's a pleasure to treat to be in the presence of you. You understand what I'm saying? You know what you do. Hollywood sometimes ain't fair to the black screenwriter / director, but fuck Hollywood. We understand in the hood what it is and what it's gonna be. You inspired me to do what I'm doing. Like I say, if it wasn't for y'all, it wouldn't be no Snoop Dogg. I was inspired as a kid. My mama used to take me to the drive-ins to go see these movies and whatnot. And I used to always see the name like, who the fuck is Jamaa Fanaka? But we couldn't say it right because nobody would give us no information on you. We would just see your movies and we'd be like, man, he dope, he good.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
That was wicked, man.